Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You have the right to remain well entertained. Are there people within the trans community who regret changing their sex and realized it was just a phase that they grew out of? If so, what was that like, and did you change anything permanently that you now regret? A good friend of mine from college transitioned from M to F and went all of the way, including the genital surgery. After a few years, he went back and is now living as a man. I don't know if he did any sort of genital surgery to go back. He had a few interviews on the web and even a blog called something like Retransition that documented the whole thing. The blog is long gone. He was not well received in the transgender community and has reduced his web presence to nothing over the last 5 years. ETA, well, this blew up and I'm not really thrilled with some of the content. I want to make it very clear that I am about as far from anti-trans as one can be. I have a transgendered sister. I have known many trans people in my life. As it happens, one of them transitioned back and I told his story. ETA 2, I just got a DM from a friend of my friend from back in the day. He guessed who it was from my description. Small world. Yay, I'm one of them. When I was 13 I really thought I was a boy, so I started dressing and acting like one. Even got my hair cut short. Wore a binder. It was mainly because I was really active in the Tumblr community and I sorta got influenced. I stayed like that for 3 years, until one day I realized I'm not a boy, I'm just kinda masculine. I didn't change anything permanently, so I was able to go back to being a girl, but the way I acted still haunts me, lol. Don't listen to PPL on Tumblr at a young age. Same. From 10 to 141 was certain I should have been a boy. Most of my friends and hobbies were considered manly and I just felt more like I should have been it all along. Dressed and cut my hair short just so I can fit in. Then I realized that I like being a girl and that I should have been it all along, and that just because I indulge more in manly stuff does not mean that I should be a man too. When I was 16 to 19 I really wanted to be a man. But as I met better people and left where I was mentally, I realized that I just wanted the respect that a man got. I was fully comfortable with being a biological woman. I left the people I was hanging out with and it changed me completely. I was in a similar mindset, except instead of wanting masculine respect I wanted a lack of female oversexualization. A big part of my gender confusion as a cis girl was that I didn't like the attention that I received from older males. I developed relatively early, and everyone from family friends to teachers took notice, often making inappropriate comments or just flagrantly staring at my chest. At the age of 12, I got solicited by a random stranger for daring to stand outside after 7 p.m. Long story short, I misinterpreted my discomfort at being viewed as a sexual object by adult men as gender dysphoria. My best friend got in a relationship with a girl who didn't want to date any guys, so she started manipulating into thinking he was a trans woman. He was madly in love with her, so he went along with it. I knew him well enough to realize that he wasn't trans, but he wouldn't hear it. He was completely convinced he was, despite never having expressed any kind of discomfort before. Only later did he realize he was in an abusive relationship and broke up with her. He never really got far enough to transition in any way, but the memories of that relationship still haunts him. Creepy poop. Wow, that's manipulative. Could have really ruined someone's life. One of my children had serious mental health problems as a child and, sometime well into that, formed an extremely strong and compelling belief that he should have been born a girl. This was getting on for 20 years ago. He was about 7. I had come from a queer-friendly background, and while I found the whole thing very challenging, I was wholly supportive. I assumed for a while, in line with the prevailing wisdom of the time, and probably now, that his other problems were a byproduct of gender conflicts. We engaged with the trans community and trans therapists, all that. The situation was acute while it lasted, which was about a year, plus another year of untangling what had unfolded. At one stage he was out of school for a long period and under around-the-clock supervision because he was talking about self-harm, not really directly related to his trans-like presentation. He was troubled much more broadly than that, but the anxiety around the trans thing didn't help. But once he was fully convinced that everyone would stand by him, he could be a girl, go to a new school where he was only known as a girl, he'd chosen a girl's name, the situation had been explained to all our extended family, etc., the whole thing just evaporated. This is a very unusual presentation and resolution for trans, because, clearly, it wasn't real trans. In his case, as much as we can figure, it was an extension of his oppositional defiance disorder. He refused to accept that he had to be limited in any way, including gender constructs. With enormous amounts of intervention, he got through his many underlying problems enough to become a productive and reasonably well-adjusted adult. He's now a flamboyant, metrosexual, rather eccentric man, but definitely identifies as a man. I detransitioned after living as a female for 5 years. The truth is, life is really, really hard for trans people. Every day is a battle with the labels society imposes on you versus what you know you are. This battle happens everywhere. Work, school, family, the DMV, phone calls, ect. I used to cry myself to sleep at night because my body wasn't female. I grieved dearly for the experiences I'll never get to have. But last year, I began to get tired of fighting. I was tired of worrying about how people saw me and tired of dressing so that I would get addressed the correct way. I still think I'm trans at heart, but I will never physically transition, and I will likely live the rest of my life as a cis male. The peace that I've had since then has been amazing. I will always desire to have a female body, and I still experience dysphoria, but the rewards, gender euphoria, living authentically, just don't outweigh the costs. Constantly having to justify yourself to people, doing anything involving legal paperwork, don't even get me started on dating, ect. Parent here, daughter decided she was trans about 2 years ago, age 14, and we fully supported her, called her by her chosen, male, name, bought a binder, even though it made me nervous. She cut her hair very short, it's shaved now. She never exhibited any masculine traits and still liked boys. We honestly just told her we wanted her to have kind friends and be a kind person. We just let her do her thing, and now she's going by her given name at school, after 2 years of chosen name, and I think she feels a little more free to be herself without stressing. We never made it a big deal but did say we would not support hormones or anything until age 18. We never relaxed or restricted our parental rules or house rules or treated any of the kids differently. I think when someone knows they have support, whatever they choose to look like, or identify as, it will help nurture their true self to shine through. My main takeaway is just love someone through their choices, unconditionally. Yeah, I thought I was a guy, turns out I'm autistic. Autistic traits are seen as inherently masculine. The way that females generally socialize is inexplicit and with unspoken rules and body language, which is something that I struggle with. Not being able to socialize with / as a girl and all these things I did being seen as masculine, it's a reasonable conclusion to come to. I was also dealing with body dysmorphia, which I thought was related to my gender, but it wasn't. I hated literally everything about myself. Basically a mixture of hating my body and being socially inept lead me into believing I was trans. I'm still not comfortable with my gender, but presenting as male didn't help me hate myself less, it just added the extra issues of being discriminated against because of it. Every single day I regret it. It really bothers me that the doctors that saw me and allowed me to transition did not see how messed up I was mentally. Only one good thing came of it, but otherwise it ruined my life and destroyed all the promise I had. I've been castrated, breast implants, lip lift, liposuction, etc. So pretty permanent stuff. Along with 5 years of HRT. I have always heard that psychotherapy leading up to any physical changes made is a huge part of the transition experience. Did you have psychotherapy before beginning your physical transition? I never felt comfortable being a girl, and when people called me pretty, etc., it always felt like a stab in the heart. I was 4 years old when a stranger in public called me bro, and I suddenly realized that I wanted to be a boy. In middle school I went by a male name, and one of my classmates would bring me some of his own clothes to change into. My mother and biological father found out when I was in high school. My father wrote me out of his will, and my mother told me if I chose to live as a man, she never wanted to see me again. It's worth noting that she molested me when I was a kid. I always knew I wanted kids, so I held off transitioning until after they were born. I felt kind of guilty for even wanting to transition, because I wanted my husband to have the perfect wife. I grew my hair out, started wearing feminine clothes again for the first time in years, and to be honest I didn't mind that much. However, when I caught him cheating on me, suddenly I didn't give a crap anymore. I decided to stay for the kids, but I wanted to transition. He was actually supportive of that. As soon as my transition was complete, after I'd had surgery, been on hormones a few years, and had my name and sex legally changed, he asked for a divorce. It took a long time to admit it to myself, but I was pretty disappointed with my transition. My voice dropped, but not enough to my liking. I had an accident at work that rendered me unable to grow hair on my chin, so a proper beard was out of the question. I passed 99% of the time, but that 1% that saw right through me kind of rattled me when it happened. I was divorced for about 4 years before I was finally over the bitterness and decided to open my heart to dating again. Guys would be really interested in me, but as soon as I revealed I was trans it was over. I even had a customer at my work ask me for my number, and when I told him he just said oh, and walked away. When I met my current boyfriend, I wasn't looking for him, but we just kind of stumbled into each other. We met online, in a group of mutual friends who was pretty much universally gay or bi. When he told me he was straight, I wrote him off as unattainable but couldn't stay away from him. The feeling was mutual, and even though I was still presenting as male, we had a connection we couldn't ignore, so he gave me a chance. I told him I was trans and he actually was okay with it, once he found out I had female plumbing. It was weird to me, but the more we hung out and got to know each other, the more I wanted to be female again. I'd always wanted to be a housewife type, making yummy dinners and doing laundry and keeping the house clean and otherwise just making my man happy, which my ex-husband just straight up didn't appreciate. My boyfriend said he would like to have a wife like that, and the feminine feelings came back pretty strong. It was super confusing at first. I didn't like it. Here I'd spent my entire life from age 4 to 30 absolutely freaking sure this was what I wanted, and here I'd met this guy who just made me feel like I should be female again. I felt like I couldn't trust myself anymore. I felt so lost. I brought it up to him and he said that as a straight guy of course he'd like it if I were more feminine, but with a connection as strong as ours, he didn't care if I stayed just as I was. He just wanted me to be happy. As long as you're mine, I don't care if you're male or female. Just keep being you. So I grew out my hair, my nails, stopped taking my hormone shots every week. When I moved states to be with him, I started going by a female name. Now, there are days when being female is just exhausting, and I'd say after a few months of being here I had a bit of a breakdown/identity crisis where I didn't know what I was anymore. I was scared to bring it up with my boyfriend, but I'm glad I did because he gave me reassurance once again that he didn't care how I presented. He loves me for my personality, and that's all that matters. Oddly enough, that reassurance kicked me out of my crisis. I still don't wear makeup, and I hate that I'm having periods again. However, I gotta say I really don't regret having my breasts removed. They were enormous, 44 fs. I lost 9 pounds when they were lopped off. People who know me IRL just accept me for being female, and if they notice that I'm flat-chested they don't bring it up. I still have my legal male name and the M on my license, but I really don't plan on ever changing those. I've had 4 legal names in my life, from being born greater than adopted more than married more than transitioned. I just can't do another name change. I'm so tired of all the legalities. In closing, my mood mostly these days is that I wish a person's sex wasn't such a visible thing. I wish I wasn't male, or female, or this name or that name or whatever. I hesitate to call myself non-binary or whatever, but I'm tired of having to jump through hoops every time my mood changes. It's exhausting. I've told my boyfriend, I feel like my body is just the skin I wear and my name is just a word. So in public I guess I'll be female, but at home with him I'm whatever the F I feel like being at that moment. I came close to it. I'm a fab, and struggled with my gender a lot as a teen. I tried to talk to my mom about it. She said if I still felt that way when I turned 21, I could transition, and then basically pretended like I'd never brought it up after that. I was very confused and frustrated. I was the only LGBTQ person I knew at the time. I wanted to explore and experiment and try on the boy hat for a while, but it wasn't possible or safe to, but I knew I wasn't a woman. I spent a lot of time crap posting in 4chan and other toxic places because they're very good at sucking you in when you're vulnerable. I was extremely fortunate to somehow make a group of decent online friends that way, many LGBTQ, many still friends of mine to this day some 14 years later, and one of these friends identified as agender. I didn't really pay attention to it at first, then finally asked them what it was out of curiosity. It was like the sun breaking out from behind the clouds. It made complete and total sense, and it was exactly what I needed to hear. I'm still trans, but I have no interest in transitioning, and I think transitioning would have ruined my life. I can already grow a poopy beard, I don't need the help. What would have been your answer or question? Leave it in the comments below. Slap that like and subscribe button for more, and check out the link in the video description for even more answers. Peace out, and catch you in the next video.